Sidorov. He is PhD student of Charles University Prague, ambassador of the Eastern Korean platform. Vadim, are you heard us? Yeah, great. We have a picture, so you could start.
I'm glad to greet all participants of this event, and I want to thank you first of all for the honor of being here. So the topic of my short talk is failure of Russia as North Eurasian country and the prospect of its eastern regions. First of all, geographically speaking, if we will look at its map, the modern Russia is a North Eurasian country with the majority of its territory being in Asia and its real center located in the Urals and Siberia. However, this geographically reality from the geopolitically and ideologically points of view is not accepted by the Russian establishment as far as Russian political society, which couldn't accept it and which couldn't accept this reality, which gave the Russian enough space for peaceful development and consolidation in the northern and eastern territories recognized by the international community. Instead, the Russian leadership, beginning already with Boris Yeltsin and more conspicuously under Vladimir Putin's third presidential term, gradually set on the course of the revival of the so-called historical Great Russia, which had formed as the Russian Empire in the 18th century and after its collapse in 1917 was recreated by communists in an incarnation called the Soviet Union. The aspiration to restore the Russian Empire, initiated by the Russian leadership with the active or passive support of a large part of the Russian population, destroyed the opportunity for the post-Soviet Russia to emerge from the imperial maelstrom in the same way as, for example, the Turks emerged from it at the beginning of the 20th century by consolidation in Anatolia and moving the capital to Ankara. For Russians, this opportunity was lost because the remaining imperial mindset required that the limited resources not eaten up by corruption be directed towards military and geopolitical confrontation instead of internal development within internationally recognized borders. Just 1 year before Russia's full-scale invasion in Ukraine, the future war criminal Sergei Shoigu announced a plan that would have served a viable alternative to the imperial expansionism, namely moving Russia's capital and the center of gravity to Siberia and building 20 new cities there. Nevertheless, in retrospect, the war in 2022 became inevitable after 2014, when Russia occupied part of Ukraine and declared it its own territory, which in itself was a consequence of Vladimir Putin's Kremlin in 2012, with the agenda of reviving the historically great Russia. It's important to note, however, that post-Soviet Russia took its first steps in this direction already in the early 1990s by creating puppet enclaves in South Ossetia, Abkhazia, and Transnistria, by striving to maintain the Kremlin sphere of influence in the post-Soviet space, and of course, by starting a brutal war in Chechnya. This all was done instead of moving the capital to Russian Ankara in the Urals or Siberia, thereby directing one's focus to developing those territories. these territories and balancing the geographical location of the country. As a result, after the inevitable failure of the recent revanchist adventure, Russia has missed the opportunity to emerge from the imperial maelstrom and is unlikely to get it again. As a result, its different ethnoculture but also geographical constituents will have to choose their own future and path of development. So, for the Western and some of the southern regions of today Russia, the natural centers of gravity and reference points will be the countries and regional associations of Europe. For the rest of the southern region, the countries of the Middle East and Central Asia. But for the eastern regions, those are the countries of East Asia and North America. And of course, there's an obvious risk of strengthening the neo-Maoist China by allowing the new post-Russian eastern states to be brought under its influence. But it shouldn't be overestimated, since country being gets everything it needs from these territories anyway, through the central government in Moscow, which has become completely dependent on China. So, anyway, the countries of North America and East Asia that wish to minimize this risk should already start developing a strategy for cooperation with the future post-Russian eastern states, including their successful development and preventing any potential turbulence emerging of criminal black holes, emergence of criminal black holes, ethnic and territorial wars, and attempts at imperial revanchism. Thank you for your attention.